So it's finally happened.
I am in the land of Los Angeles.
You are finally here in the flesh.
I'm officially here.
And it's absolutely incredible to have you.
It's been wild.
Yes,
it's been,
man.
Even just yesterday, we ran it up yesterday.
We did.
Productivity off the charts.
Oh my
Trying to
God.
run this shit remotely.
30x productivity.
It's insane.
Yeah, because my conversation with you doesn't cut off at 12 o'clock in the afternoon for me. You know what I mean? And 2 a.m. for you, you know?
But I have to say, it's been a year. So normally my wife and I come out, we run this up for about 1.5 months every year or so. October comes. My wife loves Halloween.
Yeah, me too.
No place in the world that does Halloween parties like LA does.
No.
It's insane.
Yeah.
So we run it up here for that, get a bit of work done, that kind of vibe. And I can't believe the difference in LA in 1 year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In both good ways and bad.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
It's intense. I forget how there's a leeway for everybody on meetings. Mm-hmm. Say you're going to meet at 10.
11.
That could be an hour.
Easy.
And remembering to balance that in, coming from Germany, that ain't the vibe over there.
Yeah.
You got a 5-minute window.
What do you notice in difference? Is that one of the main things that you notice in the difference of culture? One of the main things is
just flexibility, laid back,
but
hustlers.
Yeah.
But still flexibility, laid back.
It's like the most successful people you know, but they're never on time.
And I'm always fascinated with people, especially from LA. New York's a bit different.
Yeah.
New York has a bit of a different grind culture, but I don't know when people from LA get anything done.
Yeah, it's a great question.
I see them at coffee shops, vibing, chill,
yeah.
When does the work happen?
My dad lives on the East Coast, and every time he comes to LA, he makes the same joke every time. He's like, it's Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Don't all these people have jobs?
And everyone's at the gym then. Everyone's at the gym at 11 in the morning.
Yeah. And it's not the cheapest place to live.
No.
So people have to be pulling something in here, you know? But the joke about LA is that 15 minutes late is 30 minutes early to your meeting, you know?
Wild.
So it's no one's ever on time.
It's wild.
Conversations run over, don't start when they're supposed to. And it's just an accepted part of the subculture here.
And I'm also, we're staying in the land of the double income, no kids, West Hollywood. The inflation of rental properties there, because it's a wild part of town, that area.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the biggest things I've noticed as well about West Hollywood is how much Melrose, Sunset, Santa Monica, all the streets that used to be great shopping streets or great coffee shop streets, there's the strong survive there now.
Yeah.
You've still got the iconic spots, but those new pop-ups that there's so many Felice signs everywhere.
Oh yeah, deserted in a lot of ways.
It's just been, and we're talking exactly 12 months since I was here last.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely something going on that's not really being spoken about.
Yeah, for sure.
It's this underlying borderline recession that no one really wants to speak on.
Yeah.
You know?
And they just want to hope that it goes away or there's a soft landing.
Yeah.
You know?
Hope that
because
changes.
There's performance metrics for job reports, and Americans just spend. No matter what time of day it is or when it is, on the basis of economy, they spend. And they like to spend a lot, right? Yeah. So a lot of that goes into credit card debt and whatnot, but it's still turning over the basis of the economy. And you start seeing this correlation between cities where it usually happens around epicenters of different places. And you saw that starting to happen in San Francisco a couple of years ago, where the commercial value fell through the floor. And the median price of a house over there a couple of years ago was $1 million and plus and for anything. And people were shacking up 3-4 roommates in a place in order to make it affordable. And then you've watched the commercial real estate value plummet. Major corporations, Westfield, the malls, Nordstrom, all these places, because of laxed basically bail laws, right? They know that they're just going to get a slap on the wrist and they'll be out by 9 o'clock again that day. So they don't really give a shit, to be quite frank with you. And then you see the values plummet. But then on the other side of it, you see all these major corporations like BlackRock and hedge funds come in and swoop up the value 100%. Of the places for dirt cheap.
Yeah.
And they just sit on it as a 10, 15 year appreciation again, knowing that they're going to 6, 7x their property value. And that's on a soft assumption of 6, 7x, because they're swooping up $20 million buildings for a few $1 million at a time now. And they know that if they just hang on to the asset, which they can afford to do because they manage trillions of dollars.
Yeah. And
It's what happens.
I caught up with a friend of mine the other day who has always, like, his business is probably like 3-4x'd in the last 12 months, and it's like flourishing right now. And he was in an old office space.
Is he hiring?
He was in his old office space, his beat up space, but he's like, this is mine.
Yeah.
I have it.
Yeah.
And only recently he's like, I need to move. Like, I actually need to move now.
Yeah.
And he started looking, and he was just like walking into these buildings,
Yeah.
and the same agents that treated him like shit
Or up his ass.
18, 24 months ago,
Yeah.
that were like, sorry, I don't have anything for you right now. You know, you have to triple your budget if you want to play here, whatever. Are like, oh, you know what? I think we could probably do the renovation on the cost of the thing. And like, maybe, what are you thinking? 5 years? That's completely fine. We could probably do 3.
Wow.
Like, it's like, and the deal that he's got on this new office space with a rock climbing wall and like crazy, like full gym amenities, like they're resurfacing.
They throw in a butler.
2 levels, one, like the guy who's the agent's working for them now. Like, it's like, it's fully like, all encompassing. And I think it's just got like everything's shifted quietly.
Yeah.
And I think it's like this cloak of darkness. And I think probably a lot of it's got to do with the fact that there's an election right around the corner.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people, especially since this is a relatively blue state, like, that probably don't want people to feel that things aren't great. They can see it's not great, but as long as everyone's confident about it, I think there's a bit of that happening.
Yeah.
And I think that America's probably going to make a little bit of a backslide come January, once sort of the decision's made and everyone can breathe for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And we don't have to hold this thing together with glue.
Yeah. And a little bit of duct tape.
And I think once I think it'll level itself out. People can be honest with what's happening and move forward. But it's like, it's different.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
most certainly. Like, I've noticed that having been here now close to 2 decades myself, right? I've noticed such a difference in temperament of people, like, especially more than anything. Like, California always carried this reputation comparative to New York, where, like, when you meet an asshole in New York, it's expected. Like, if someone's walking by you on the street, they're like, get out of my way. It's part of the charm of New York in a way, right?
It's built, personality's built into the streets.
Exactly. Yeah. And California always had this reputation of people being like, extremely nice, extremely laid back. Now the temperament that I see in people on those streets, on driving, like road rage interactions, everybody just seems stressed in a lot of way. And then you have the other side of it where you're saying, where it's like this other division of people who are just too laid back and like too cool for school and obviously have something figured out, right? Yeah. But understanding that our generation, the millennial generation, had the largest wealth transfer in the history of the world, where they inherited a majority of their money. Currently, every billionaire under the age of 30 is full inheritance, right? Because the Zuckerbergs of the world, they've aged now, right? Like, every billionaire under the age of 30 has inherited their wealth, whether it's the L'Oreal girls or anybody that's actually on that Forbes list. And boomers hold the most amount of wealth that's ever been created, right? They had prime good situations of economic upside, like the housing value was way lower, their income value was equivalent or higher than even what the base prices of these homes were. So is it a little bit of a facade where like people are able to do what they do because mom and dad are helping them out, or is it the basis of like, I'm sure it's a fair mix, and I don't want to take away from the people who really get it and hustle, right? But it seems to be like the people who really get it and hustle, just from my understanding and the people that I know, are the imports into LA, are the people who come here and are forced to survive and grind to make it, you know?
I think I agree. And I think the two things. One, I read a study the other day on that situation of the 4 trillion or whatever it is that's being transferred from one generation to the other. And one of the things that it dove very deep into was the fact that evaluation, so much of it is tied up in businesses, not actually in cash. So those businesses are plumbing businesses, they're screw companies, they're these boring entities that their children that have grown up with desires to be HR and marketing managers and these sort of sexier type jobs are just not interested in taking over. But as a result, those businesses, they don't they're not worth anything if no one's running them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's this notion of like, there's this thing, everyone thinks these trillions of dollars are going to flood and transfer between generations, but there's going to be a significant portion of those trillions that are not going to transfer.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to take them over.
Absolutely.
Or there's going to be people taking them over that are ill-equipped to run those companies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's going to be very, very interesting. And I think, speaking of, anytime there's a negative thing happening in the world, there's a positive force pushing behind it.
Yeah.
If you are out there right now and you don't really care what you have to do to make money, but you want to stay inside legal bounds,
Yeah.
if you want to run it up,
Yeah.
you should figure out how to earn enough money to be able to go and get a loan from the bank.
Yeah.
And buy these businesses undervalued
Yeah.
before the parents pass away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're taking over companies that are spitting cash,
Yeah.
and they just need someone that's not useless
Yeah.
to run them.
Yeah. There's a lot of
There's
opportunity.
a lot of opportunity to take over these. So instead of inheriting, if you are someone that doesn't have the luxury of a parent that is going to hand you something,
Yeah.
earn enough money
Yeah.
to buy it
Yeah.
from the person
Yeah.
that is going to be inheriting that to their children.
Absolutely.
And that is an opportunity like no other right now.
Yeah.
If you don't mind owning a plumbing company and just learning how to manage staff,
Yeah.
there's no, like, those kinds of unsexy businesses have always been where wealth lies, but it's not
Always.
what people talk about on social media.
Yeah,
It's
ever.
not the crypto course. It's not the sexy money,
Yeah.
but it's money.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It buys you the car you want. It
Yeah.
buys you the house you want.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to
honest
play
living.
that game,
Yeah.
it's right now, the honest living is more than living. It's a
Yeah.
great life.
Absolutely.
It's consistency. It's like, there's a lot of value sitting in that, and there's a lot of opportunity sitting in that space right now that I'm fascinated by.
Yeah.
People that are willing to go and buy that plumbing business that's, turning over 6 million, 7 million a year, and you
Yeah.
can buy that on a 2 to 3 times multiple.
Yeah.
You're never going to buy a tech startup at a 2 to 3 times multiple. It's not going to happen.
No.
Not
no.
with that level of, and at the end of the day, everyone needs their toilet fixed.
Yeah.
Like that, there's very few, like there's still a period of time before robotics takes that over.
Yeah.
So we have you have a window here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's
those
what I'm fascinated by.
those businesses are also easier to find than people think. Like
Yeah.
there's websites online that you could utilize that help you find turnkey businesses.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's either people who have progressed to a point of where they just want to be situated in a retirement basis, or they really don't have anyone to hand it over to. And even not even going on the scale to the tune of millions. Like when I was looking up something that had to do with a couple pharmacies and some other businesses that we can link where it is, because I have to remember what the website was, but it's literally like some turnkey type domain.
Yeah.
And the business was looking for like a $400,000 buyout, and like they did anywhere from like $130,000, $160,000 a year in revenue, which if you're in the right situation is more than enough to live a comfortable and happy life, just depending on how you situate and manage your finances. Like it doesn't have to be this abundant, extravagant situation, because we know that men lie, women lie, numbers don't, right? And statistically speaking, 70 some odd % of the country that we always discuss lives paycheck to paycheck. A majority of Americans don't even own a stock or an investment vessel, and they don't even have $1,000 for an emergency situation to pop up. So a majority of what's being thrown in your face with these highlights and shit that people are trying to show you on social media is complete bullshit.
Yeah.
It's complete bullshit. But the other side of that that's really interesting is when you're saying that these honest living situations are so formidable and presentable and accessible to most people. One statistic that I read the other day that I found fascinating is 27 million people now officially identify as an influencer or content creator. Okay. 12 million of them in the United States last year filed taxes under that bracket. Okay.
Whoa.
Which is creeping on over 5% of the country's population. So 5 out of every 100 people now consider their day-to-day job and taxation bracket
Or at
to be
least a
content creation.
percentage of their income.
Yeah.
So whether they're making that working at a coffee shop and then
Yeah.
doing some UGC content creation on the
Yeah.
side,
Yeah.
like they're supplementing something
Yeah.
with that. And I think that's happening a lot. That's the other trend that I'm seeing is like people are not relying on their salary no more.
No, you can't.
Even if you're not an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
there's like side hustles, things happening all the time. And I
Absolutely.
think people are taking that into their own hands.
Yeah.
A percentage of the population is.
Yeah. What's fascinating though in that basis is like you always have the outliers of demographics who are crushing it. And another thing that I was reading about was in Gen Z, there's a bracket of like 15 to 18-year-old kids who have figured out like automated content posting situations with like TikTok affiliate stuff, YouTube affiliate stuff. And there's a good amount of them who are literally still in high school that are clearing dangerous
like
amounts
TikTok
of
Shop
money.
is making a lot of people a lot of money.
Oh, for sure.
You know, I don't know how long
sure.
it lasts for, but it's a whole other thing happening right now. With,
Yeah.
especially, I think also everyone should be observing what's going on with TikTok at the moment.
Yeah,
because
they
that
have till
ban-
January, right?
Till January.
That's not that far away. And is there any chatter of acquisitions? Or
I think there's definitely chatter going on behind the scenes. I think they're holding strong on like, we'll bury it, we'll let you live without it and deal with the younger side of the population, but they're not going to let that happen. But the one thing that I didn't think about too much until today, when I was talking about it in a meeting earlier on, there's a real challenge for them and I didn't realize how kind of unfair this is. I'm not here to defend TikTok, but like for a government to say you got to sell to an American company,
yeah,
not a lot of option there.
no,
So if I'm an American company, I'm like, you're worth
250 billion plus.
and I'm going to give you
Yep.
7.
Yeah, because you don't have a choice.
And then you tank the whole valuation of the company
Yeah.
based off what it's valued out of America, which is its largest market.
yeah,
You know, it's an interesting thought on how much a government can meddle in an acquisition of a company.
My God. Yeah.
But it's an ethical line. But then you've got the other ethical line of like, are you okay with data being shared overseas?
Supposedly, right? Supposedly. If we understand the basis of, not even trying to dive into a rabbit hole here, but if we understand the basis of how our own government collects and analyzes and uses our own data, like that's the threat you should be more worried about.
What I'm worried about is I have real serious conversations with people that have watched a TikTok video from George's basement, and that's their news.
Yeah, for sure.
That's where they get it from.
Yes.
And they're not fully acknowledging where the source of that has come from.
Yeah, or even willing to fact check.
There is
because
an
it appeases
underlying,
them. Yeah.
like whenever I jump, like for example, when TikTok had the whole thing with Congress and they had to stand up in front of Congress, all I saw was positive notions around TikTok and how they handled the Congress meeting.
Yeah.
So the platform obviously is going to feed what's best for it.
Yeah.
And if part ownership of that platform is another government, it's obviously going to feed and tilt the scales. And if you own the attention of a younger generation, that shit's worrying.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I understand the need to like address it and but you could also just tell them to house their data here. Like,
absolutely. Like there's so many solutions.
To sell it.
When a story doesn't fully make sense all the way, you have to follow the money.
Yeah.
You have to follow the money. That's the only way that you could come to real conclusions here. So when you recognize how much Meta and the parent companies like Alphabet of Google, and who's now the Republican candidate's biggest donor in Elon Musk, the owner of X, right? Obviously we know who Elon Musk is, but the fact that he owns X, formerly known as Twitter, now donating over $144 million to the campaign directly, right? When you follow what they lobby with, right, and the political organizations that they support, which are the main ones that are lobbying against the TikTok ban, and then you pay attention to the fact that Mark Zuckerberg has now become the second or third wealthiest publicly listed person on planet Earth, right, with a net worth of over $200 billion, like, you start to recognize the aspirations of these individuals and why it is that they're positioning themselves in the manner that they are, right? The other side of it, the silver lining of the situation, is when it is scary to have complete control over a younger generation. Have you ever seen so many kids be so insightful with the fact of self-improvement because of these platforms?
Totally.
Like talking about the early understanding of enlightenment and pursuing spirituality and questioning the greater agenda of their government and these massive corporations, right? So the way that the media words it, right, is it may be that, oh, you have to be worried about your data and how they're collecting it, when the reality of it is that when you have such a massive vessel that's so effective at being an influential outlet, but the agenda that's being preached is for a positive basis and a reaffirmation of self-invigoration and self-empowerment, and understanding how much power really lies in your hands as the youngest generation and how you could sway anything. That's where the threat comes from.
Totally. And I think the, to ladder this back to the music industry, which is, I think, in a very unique spot. We've talked about this a lot, about how, as an independent artist, how do you push yourself in this current landscape? And most people's answer to that question is TikTok. And
post 4 times a day.
So you've got people sitting there right now going, well, the one thing everyone said to do could be gone when I come to release my next single on January 17th. Right? So now what do I do? Now, I think this is amazing for the industry, because maybe it has people focusing a little bit more on the music again.
And development.
100%. Because we had a meeting the other day, and I said something that I was embarrassed by.
And we just lost it.
And we lost it. And that thing was, they just have to be talented.
That was classic.
I just caught myself as I said it, and I was like, since when did that become something that has to be said?
Exactly. And I said, if that isn't a reflection of the current state of the industry, I don't know what is.
And it's not, I think there's like a common direction to go here is like, stop being so easily persuaded artist. But we're telling them what to do. Labels, managers, everyone's like TikTok. Everyone says the same thing in different language. But when you're sitting there receiving that information, whether it's through a TikTok, something you've seen on social, the reason why you didn't get the deal you thought you'd get, the reason why the manager wouldn't sign you, when all of these things ladder back to you need numbers on TikTok, what happens when the industry doesn't have that secondary anchor point, right? I think that then, hopefully, in my like utopian world that I'm conjuring up in my brain, that becomes music. Let me sit with your music for a little while. Let me sit with it for a sec. You know? And I think the more things that like get in the way of a metric that's not, I like this, I don't like this. I think we've just got so far down this analytical rabbit hole. And I am a data-driven human being. I make a lot of my decisions based off data. But I'm very obsessed with music. That's why we got in this thing.
Of course, you're a fan first and foremost.
Always. And there's so, like we've had experiences with artists where I will pass on things that make great sense through data because I can't see it. I just don't see it.
It doesn't resonate with you.
It doesn't resonate with me, and I can't come up with a plan for something that I don't like it.
Absolutely.
And I'm wrong often.
You
know, but I can't get passionate about something, and I can't feel something and stand up as I do in some meetings and pitch something with a real level of care if I don't care.
Because it shows that you actually have genuine intention, though.
And 100%. And I think now, with the potential removal of TikTok, or reshaping of what it means to us as a music industry, I hope that can start to feed its way into more label meetings, more management meetings, more artist development, more realization that, you know, you can sign a TikTok artist, you can make that TikTok artist blow up, but at some point they got to get on that Coachella stage.
100%.
And if they haven't performed at 17 live music venues in each city before they've made that happen, they're going to fall flat on their face and never build a real fan base.
Absolutely.
And the notion of super fan apps and super whatever means nothing. If no one wants to be a super fan.
That couldn't be more well said. And I can reflect on that from a personal experience that you're well aware of. It's an artist that I was involved in managing and helping to move things along for him. It's a perfect reflection of his situation, right? A young, late teens finds a massive outlet for success on TikTok, right? Well before anybody thought that it was going to arrive at his doorstep. Something happens, he catches a moment, right? Keyword that he catches a moment. That moment explodes into something, a temporary trend of sorts. He does hundreds of millions of streams. The label that comes and signs him and hands this young kid, a 17, 18-year-old kid, millions of dollars with no guidance, with no repercussions, with no boundaries, no situation or formulaic approach of how he should best utilize that, right? They hand him millions of dollars and ask him to do it again, okay?
Yeah.
Completely bypassing the developmental phase that you're talking about, the recruitment of actual fans who aren't just into you for a momentary trend that they like a sound that they used a couple times. You get a few 100,000 UGCs that are made. That label then on the back end of it can already calculate what the projection of that record is going to be. So they hand you a note over that they know they're already going to make back, right? Yeah. That's how we know the formulaic approach of the music industry works. That's how it's always run. But they got so caught up, and by they, I mean the bigwigs of the industry, got so caught up on this formulaic approach of recognizing where their ROI is going to come from, their return on investment, and knowing how they were going to make their money back without having to take any of that inherent risk, that it became a business model that they started salivating over. They're like, wait a second, we don't have to do any of this. We don't have to pay for the music. These kids are getting their music off of YouTube beats for $20 that they pay the producer, the Old Town Roads of the world, right? The song blows up and does 1 billion streams. We make tens of millions of dollars off of the licensing, the sync out opportunities, everything that happens and formulates around a hit record. And then what happens? This kid is completely abandoned. No one tells him anything that he does wrong from right because they don't want to step on anything, right? To make sure that if it does happen again, they just have an opportunity to strike. This kid is completely left in the dust. Everybody that had approached him, from the thousands of emails that he had in his inbox to all the people just blatantly kissing his ass in the situation, are now nowhere to be found. He's now in a situation where he's immensely talented, and he's 19 years old, okay? And people don't want to approach it or don't want to do anything with a 10-foot pole because they look at it as like, yeah, but that one record did 500 million streams. Your last one did 8 million. And comparative to what a trending, developing artist would feel, like, you're not going to knock number ones out of the park always. Like, we've forgotten the emphasis of what artist development actually is. And the prowess of that has become, okay, give us a viral moment, let's chase it, let's make our money back, and then move on to the next one and shelf this while we own your rights for the next 10 years. And then by the time you get the rights and masters back for this record, you're 30 years old, and good luck making that happen again, right? And you haven't been able to monetize off of your biggest hit that you've given out because
100%.
We convinced you that $1 million at that time was perfect for you to sign your life away.
And all you need to do is wait 3 months for that payment to roll through.
Yeah, sometimes 9 months. You can afford
to do.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so, and there's, and I think the other thing too is I think everyone underestimates the options you have as an independent artist in today's landscape.
Yeah.
And education is the only thing that's getting in the way of you understanding the options that you hold.
Yeah.
And I think so many artists roll around life with this level of anxiety. And anxiety is only formed from a lack of information.
Absolutely.
And the minute you solve that problem and the minute you realize you have options, and then you can figure out how to navigate and how to build a team around you and how to do that with a basis of understanding that allows you to make good decisions.
Yeah.
I think that's the, you know, there are funding options that are not a major label.
Plenty.
There are funding options that are not an independent label.
Yeah.
There are funding options that are through managerial situations that you can do direct. That like there are so many options out there when it comes
that
to
you still own your shit.
That you still own your shit.
Yeah.
And you can still get flow through revenue. You can structure them. You're not going to get. It's not going to change your life. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest shift and the biggest change that I wish artists would make faster is, you making money is on you.
Yeah.
It's not a bag that's going to appear on your table.
Yeah.
You're not doing tasks and checking things off so that that bag comes to you from a major label.
Yeah.
You're not growing TikTok followers so that you can get a label to pay attention to you.
Yeah.
You're building audience interaction.
Yeah.
And off the back of that interaction, your life will open up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you allow yourself to focus on building that core base and that core fandom, and then you figure out your funding alternatives off the back of that.
Yeah.
And I say this till I'm blue in the face. You are a business.
Yes.
You're an artistic business.
Yeah.
But you're still a business.
100%.
Art has to come first. You have to make good music to build a business off. But you are in charge of this thing. Mm-hmm. Stop waiting for this person above to bestow their attention upon you and allow you to have an opportunity.
Yeah.
We're just not, I don't want to live in that world.
No, of course not. And artists have to place emphasis on scaling their business. Like, just like any other business, you may start with a desk and a picture frame and a computer. And by year 10, hopefully you're in a building, a high rise, and you have 300 employees. But that's not going to happen overnight. And it's the same manner in which artists have to approach their music, right? Is you have to believe in the emphasis of scaling your business. So you don't need $1 million deal that you have to pay back ultimately. With your music and with your earnings. And if you haven't paid that back, you're not going to walk into another building and have them give you money, because the old entity still has to collect on what you're owed, which is something that's really lost on artists, right? And the other side of it, the other side of this equation is artists can take the amount that they need to get to work. Okay. They have to become resourceful. They have to trust in good and viable marketing outlets to be able to help them scale. And the other side that I want to touch on too is this stigma that exists around publishing situations. Okay. A lot of people, far too many, more than I would like to admit, who are in the music industry or who are creators and writers and performers, aren't even aware of what publishing is, okay? And a lot of them look at it as this additional thing of like signing your life away without recognizing how the formulaic approach to publishing actually works, and that it's money that's owed to you that's in the pipeline for your representation of being a creator on the song. So publishing works as representing the creators on a record, normally split between writers and producers, dependent on what it is. If there's one writer, he'll normally get his whole share of the publishing. They normally share in it with the producers, dependent on the genre. It varies a little bit. But normally in the construct of R&B, pop, anything that really drives melodic elements, these producers are writing chord progressions and writing melodies, which is considered writing because they're giving you the avenue to write over, right? So it's a writing contribution. And these artists look at it as like, oh, I'm not going to sign publishing. Like, I'm going to hold off as long as I possibly can, without understanding that publishing basically has a 3-year lifespan for records on when it's collected on, right? Every single day that goes by after that 3-year period, the value of your catalog just drops 100%. Off. So it could be 100K today. It'll be 99,000 tomorrow. The day after that, it'll be 98,000. And this is something that artists are really unaware of. So they look at it as like, oh, I have to pay the mob mentality in order to get my money. But are you going to go and administer your stuff yourself and go and collect every dollar that you're owed? No, you're not. You don't have the approach, or you don't have the resources or the infrastructure to be able to do that. So don't jade yourself. Don't become jaded to something that you don't fully educate yourself on. You understand? I know so many artists that they have had literally billions of streams. This is not an exaggeration. And this is a conversation I made you aware of less than 2 weeks ago. I had a conversation with a massive artist who was like, no, I've never signed a publishing deal. And I was flabbergasted. I literally went silent for like 30 seconds, and he's like, why is that crazy?
Trust or something like that? Is he set up any collection vehicle?
I don't think so. And I know that sounds crazy.
That makes me want to cry.
Yeah. And it's like, where's the management situation? Which when I tried to relay this to him, right, he fully agreed. He's like, well, this is why.
That's based on that, who we're talking about, that's probably like 7 or 8 million.
Easily.
Like, on a conservative basis.
Easily.
And all he had to do was give up 10 to 15%
and just have them administer it.
And have them administer it.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a very, 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 very clear and common mistake. Mm-hmm. People think pub is what you do for other people.
Yeah. Like you have to be a writer for other people.
You're a writer for Justin Bieber, and that's the only way you're going to make good pub money.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to sign a pub deal, and they're just going to shop you around and be in writing rooms with everybody else under the sun. And yes, there is a great way to make a living. I know some writers that make great lives. Mm-hmm. You can make that cash. Mm-hmm. And you can be a writer that starts their career off earning enough to rent your first house in LA off what you do for other people. Mm-hmm. And then use that as investment capital for your own career. Yeah. It's what a lot of people struggle to do is like come off the writing world into their own world, because it's once you build a reputation for yourself, it's kind of very persuasive to just stay there,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not what you came here to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the amount of people that come to LA to be an artist, they start writing and they never leave as an artist. They leave as a writer is a lot. And that's okay,
lot.
right? But like, if you're an artist, use it as a vehicle, understand that it's there to do it for other people, but also what you hold for your own stuff. And
Absolutely.
just be okay to pay the admin fee.
Of course.
There's two sides of it. You have the admin side and you have the
Co-pub.
The co-pub.
Yeah.
And just understand the landscape.
Yeah.
Honestly, get on ChatGPT
And ask.
and ask it.
Yeah. What's the difference?
What's the difference? Ask
Yeah.
all the dumb questions that you feel are so silly
Yeah. That you just don't want to
that you
express
just
anywhere
don't
else.
want to ask anyone else to
Yeah.
sound silly.
Yeah.
Like, just go there.
Yeah, but a short form explanation is very simple. An administration basis of publishing is you pay a much smaller fee for them to go and collect the money that is owed to you for your work.
Yeah.
A co-pub situation is when the publishing company has a co-share in the copyright situation. So it's just a different structure of fees and what they do. And normally, because there's a higher recoupment rate on what they would advance you for the co-pub situation, that is going to usually, dependent on your situation with the A&Rs and who you are basically working with, they will put you in rooms to make that formidable and actually make it a viable situation for yourself. But that's the best advice I've heard, actually, and it's so simple in front of your face is get on ChatGPT. Like, ask the questions that you don't know. What is a co-pub situation? What's a publishing administration situation? For this current situation that I'm in,
Here's where I'm at.
what is the best
do you think
situation
the best
for me?
move is? Like, I'm not sure the right way. Can you give me my options?
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't like that idea. What else would you recommend? Just ask it everything.
Another crazy thing was the previous artist that I was talking about that had like the crazy TikTok moment when we were arranging and figuring out a publishing situation for him, which has now passed, and he's happy with the situation because I explained to him what the science of it actually is. There was like 3 or 4 of his songs that actually more. There was like 6 or 7 of his records that collectively probably had over 400 million streams that hadn't been registered with the Performance Rights Organization, by the way.
Yeah, the problem is it's dead money now.
It's completely dead money.
You know, you can maybe salvage some of it back with a decent admin company.
Yeah.
Like someone that's not just a straight digital admin, but a human admin.
But you've lost 75% of the catalog's value at minimum. At minimum.
And
you
the
know?
rest. But yeah, like it's just, I think it's so difficult because it's confusing until it's not.
Yeah.
And then it's like you wake up and you're like, like the other thing that's missing and kind of unclear to people is the way sync operates too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like sync and licensing, like you can make good money off sync if you sign the right deals with the right partners. Like there are a lot of sync partners that like do non-exclusive deals.
Yeah.
So you can sign with 6 or 7 sync agencies.
Yeah.
And they're out there shopping your work and your music. And if you create differentiated enough sound, you can make some decent coin off that.
Of course. And sync in dummy terms is when your music gets synced to film or picture, television, commercials, any ideation that's basically not a music video
100%.
or audio stream.
100%.
Essentially, for those who don't understand what sync is.
And then you've also got other players like Artlist and these other platforms that are used for like wedding videography stuff.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking to make a couple of $100 here, a couple of $100 there, better than a punch in the dick.
Yeah.
Like just take it.
Yeah,
you
for
know,
sure.
and understand that you can make music for those outlets. That's not your music.
Yeah.
Like I think so often artists get so caught up in this notion of like everything I make has to be for me.
Yeah.
But you can make different levels of things.
100%.
You can make things that you feel match a TV commercial. You can make things that you feel match, you know, furniture. Overlay of furniture or whatever. Like and being okay with that and understanding that this is also a bit of a job.
Yeah.
Like it can't all be sunshine and roses.
Yeah.
And just like there's a part of this which is like, okay, I got to get to work now and make 7 tracks that I'm going to put onto Artlist. I'm going to put onto these other platforms and see what you can make off the back of that.
Yeah.
And I think there's like a couple of interesting options for artists. And I think that's been really where my head's been at lately on a lot of just calls with artists is like, just take this shit in your hands.
Empower
Like,
yourself.
Yes, I could give you a bag of money, but you don't want that bag. You want it now, but I'm going to have this conversation with you later on of, I told you so. You know, you said a great thing the other day with what was the July's decisions thing? What's
The
that one?
September version of themselves doesn't like their July decisions.
Yes, and the way I think about deals, the 2019 version of yourself doesn't like the 2022 version of yourself doesn't like the 2019 decisions.
Wholeheartedly.
And it just macro that.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just a bigger lay. It's a bigger overlay.
Yeah.
And that's what I just wish artists understood is like, just take this is on you.
Yeah.
You know, as much as everyone wants to help and as much as you're going to get sold by a bunch of people that are really good at sales, like everything's in your hands.
Yeah.
Control your fate.
Yeah, and the educational aspect of things is within reach. Like you can, with the tools of AI and large language models these days and everything that's a Google, your iPhone, the superpower that you possess in your pocket, like education is within reach, and self-education is self-empowerment ultimately. And like, you have to understand the hierarchy of how these things work. So when you understand that, like a corporation that works with these sync departments, for example, they don't want to pay $1 million for Chris Isaac's Wicked Games. Right? Yeah. But it's one of the most recognizable songs ever. And what do? They still have to spend the budgets because it becomes a write-off for them in development costs at the end of the day, and they'd rather not get taxed on it and just lose it. So they have to spend it when they commit it to these projects. So if a Netflix series, right, has a $500,000 music budget, they're not going to go and blow $500K on one record when they have 60 minutes of audio to fill up with songs. But they're willing to pay 15 to 20 grand for inspiring, captivating, and moody covers of these records. So they don't want to pay out on the master portion, but they'll pay out for the pub. You understand? And it's like, you can get into that, and it's a very lucrative world for a lot of artists. And once they figure out like a niche, which I'm sure has happened to plenty of the viewers or people's listening, myself included, you'll be watching a trailer of a movie and you're like, wow, I really like this version of this song because it's a familiar record, but it's like a slowed down, moody, eerie version of it that they just decided to pay 1/20th of the price, but it's still lucrative to that person that's coming up. And that's the basis of what a lot of people don't understand, is just like having to curate a formulaic approach, and not to bounce too far from it, but from you speaking from personal experience, because your wife is a very credible influencer, right? But she was influencing, quote unquote, from the time that it was called blogging, right? Like before anybody even saw the foresight. Like she was doing what she was doing, like back when Joe Rogan launched his podcast. Like saw it before it was even a viable option for a career. And it's like, you've seen it up close and personal. How many iterations of different approaches and hustles has she had to go through until she actually figured out how to make it a monetizable career, and a lucrative 100%. One at that, you know?
100%. She is, I've worked with a lot of different thinkers, and she wins.
Yeah.
Like her ability to trust her gut and to just deal with the consequences of things, of which she never feels in the end. Like I always think whenever she says she's going to do something, I'm like, but what about this, this, and this? They're all outcomes that never happen.
Yeah. She just trusts that intuition.
She just trusts the intuition, and I think about the thing that could go wrong, and she just thinks about where it's going. Yeah. And she's also got a really strong pulse on culture, and she's got a really strong pulse on where she feels things should, the natural order of things, and that's where she goes. And that's got her from a point where she launched her blog in, I think, 2007.
That's insane, bro.
And she launched it with the intention of getting a job.
Yeah.
At Cosmopolitan.
Dude, I was like 16 years old.
Yeah, she launched it with the intention of that. She was going through university, and she started this blog. She's like, I just think people are going to want to see how I write, aren't they? Wow. So she just launched this thing, and then it started to take off. Then she got asked to go on a TV show, and then the TV show really took off. And then the blog was like churning, and it was all through affiliate back then. So people would send her clothes for nothing, and then she'd make dollars off every post, every product that got sold, and it went insane. She started making good money off the blog, and then Instagram comes around. She already had a following. She just moved that following from an email list into a social media base on Instagram, and then she kind of like phased out the blog, and now she doesn't really post on it anymore, and now she's parlayed that into that world, and now she's about to make a giant leap forward on her next secret project, which will come out this week, and
Epic.
It's going to completely change who she is again, and how she's perceived again.
Yeah, the next reiteration.
And I think that's one of the things that I respect so much about her, and one of the things that I've tried to do in my life and career is evolve.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
figure out how to keep the parts of who you are you want to keep,
Yeah.
that make you who you are.
Yeah.
But the labeling of what you are
Yeah.
can change.
Absolutely.
Like, I started my career as the advertising guy,
Yeah.
the young advertising guy, the
Yeah.
guy that went straight from high school into advertising. That's
Yeah.
what I was branded as for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I shedded that, started a gym.
Yeah.
Then I was the gym guy
Yeah.
that was in the advertising industry beforehand. And then I went, shut that, influencers.
Yeah.
Worked at the guy that made brands around influencers. And
Yeah.
I was that. And then I moved into music. And then I
Yeah.
was that. And then every single time I made the leap, I took everything I learned from Prip before and I threw it into the next thing.
Absolutely.
And Elle's done the same thing.
Absolutely.
Elle's ability to storytell
Yeah.
is because she was a writer.
Yeah.
She wrote like a blog post a day.
Yeah. So
for
she knows what
years.
it is
So
that
she knows how to
captivates an
construct
audience.
a story.
Yeah.
And she knows how to convert a listener to a fan.
Yeah.
And she's done that over her career. And I think that's one of the things that I think artists often forget is
Yeah.
there's two stories that are happening at every single moment of your career.
Yeah.
There's the story you're writing in the song, and then there's your brand story
Yeah.
and your artist story.
Yeah.
What stage of the journey are you on? Don't skip steps.
Yeah.
Don't
Ever.
be something before you're it.
Yeah.
Because you people read bullshit better than ever before in human history.
Oh, for sure.
Especially through a digital lens.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely something that artists have to like reconsider and think on. Is like, where am I at?
Yeah. And what do I want to become?
And what do I want to become?
Yeah.
And what are the steps between where I'm at and where I want to be?
The 100 steps.
And
Yeah.
1,000 steps.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
and how do I navigate towards that?
Yeah.
And there's going to be deviations.
Of course, there's going to be
dead
setbacks.
end, and you're going to have to turn around and come back. But
Yeah.
ultimately, the game is to like 2 steps forward,
Yeah.
1 step back.
Yeah. 1 step to the side, 4 steps forward.
It's just keep
Yeah.
it moving and understand that, you know, as long as you're clear on where you're heading, and
Yeah.
as long as you're clear on what you want,
Yeah.
and you don't, like, at the end of the day, no artist has made it by giving up.
Yeah.
Like, no one got there.
Yeah.
Like, no one.
Yeah.
You know,
Ever.
everyone that kept going
Yeah.
made it.
Yeah. You can't shut the window and then expect light to come in, you know?
Every single person that kept going made it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and
In
I
one
think,
way or another.
one way or another.
Yeah.
And making it, the definition of that changed. When
Yeah.
Elle started the blog, her definition of success was a job at Cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
Now, that's a nightmare for her.
Yeah.
She's like, why would I ever want to be that?
Yeah.
But she couldn't have got past that unless that was what the goal was.
Yeah, and what drove her initially.
And you might start out going, I want to be a pop artist, and you might end up being the biggest writer in the world.
Yeah.
You know, you're
Which
just
is
not
a
going to
great
know.
success and a win. I mean, to correlate back to even what you're saying, it was the same basis for me. Like the amount of reinventions that I've had to have is unbelievable. Like I started interning at studios when I was 16 years old, thinking that I wanted to be a mixing engineer. Like that's what started my progression into the music industry. Then I was so obsessed with like the formulaic approach and how they make things sound a certain way, and I became so fascinated about this plugin and that plugin, which is like what you use to put effects and do mixing and whatnot. Then it evolved into a different part of a different calling where I was like, you know what, I actually love the writing side of stuff. Let me pursue the writing stuff. Saw successes here and there, but knew deep down that it wasn't where I ultimately wanted to be. Then progressed into the production side of stuff. Did a lot of successful productions, was a part of a lot of successful productions. Then ended up being like, you know what? I feel better being in a managerial role of like managing the talent because I have a different emphasis of understanding all the layers of this industry, from the mixing to the writing to the production and this. And I can kind of play both sides of the fence. I can play a little bit of an executive producer role while understanding the managing side of things. Then, born out of necessity of me dealing with so many different ends of people who promise one thing and deliver another, under deliver and overcharge, all this shit, I was like, all right, I need to fully understand this approach to marketing and understand what it is and what they're doing. And then that ended up taking a completely different grasp and road for me. And then through that, I built a studio that ended up being 4 rooms and this and that, and cost me way more than I ever thought it would, with the intention of being like, you know what? this is going to be my hub where I can do the productions, I can do the writing, I can do all that stuff. What it ended up being for me was just a vessel that brought networking through the door.
Yeah.
And it brought so many people into the situation that I was able to connect with, able to build personal relationships, which ultimately in theory is what led me to you.
Yeah.
You understand?
And
so like,
likewise,
how would I ever have written that?
100%. And I think you've also got the other layer, and I think the thing that the metaphor will create through your pure skill set, I think what I've never seen someone do better than you is your ability to understand there are 17 personalities in this scenario, and I'm in all of their heads. I understand how they're all feeling. When I say this means that. When Jeff says this, Joe goes that. Like that ability to understand the tentacles that come off a business exchange. And from the music industry standpoint, you understand how the producer's feeling, how the manager's feeling, what's going on in the label's head, what's going on in the artist's head. Now there's a songwriter come in, then there's a business partner, there's a financing entity, there's a publishing entity. Like all the entities all have a pulse. Your ability to understand the pulse of everyone involved in every scenario and then to layer scenarios on top of each other that are disconnected. That ability to connect dots and run that through is, out of all the experience that you picked up along the way, it doesn't hold a candle to the inherent ability to manage those scenarios.
I appreciate that.
You know? And I think the reason why the end game won for you, or is winning for you, is because of that skill that's run through all the transitional nature of your career.
Yeah.
And every artist has their own version of that. The thing that makes them uniquely them. It could be a combination of, like we were talking about an artist before, the way they deliver a vocal makes the writing
no one
redundant.
else can do. Yeah. No
Doesn't
one else can do
matter
it. Yeah.
what the writing is. No, good luck.
Yeah.
Pick up that microphone. I dare you, fucker, to try and match what that is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's why, as much as anyone loves the writing, they hear the delivery and they can't match it.
No.
Right?
No.
And that is that skill. That is that person's unique thing.
Absolutely.
How do you build a future around that thing?
Yeah.
You have your thing. I have my thing. Everyone we work with that's made it has the thing that I can be like,
no one else can do that.
that is you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, no one can do that.
Yeah.
Like you can do that.
Yeah.
And all you got to do is weaponize that, build a life around that.
Yeah.
And money will come.
Yeah.
Money comes off value.
Yeah.
And value comes off people feeling like you are valuable.
Well
and
said.
the only way to do that is to use what is uniquely you, or else you're just like everybody else.
Absolutely.
And everyone has that inside of them. And most of the time, it's the thing you avoid the most.
Well said, man.
It's the part of you run away from. For me, I can't read or write, so I don't really do it.
Which is the craziest shit ever.
Right? I don't really do it.
Because I would never, ever get that impression.
But I think everyone has that thing where, like, when
I
you
depend on you for our copies.
But it's,
Am I Dan, write this up?
Because I think the things you're most scared of,
Yeah.
you put the most effort to solving.
Yeah.
So when you hate things, you
Yeah.
solve them.
Yeah.
And so your weaknesses
Become your greatest strength.
becomes your biggest strength because
Yeah.
they're the things you solved better than anybody else.
Yeah.
And the reason why I write copy better than anyone else
Yeah.
is because I don't write copy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I do it differently.
Yeah.
I record voice notes.
Yeah.
I record them over and over again. I upload them into a model. The model knows my tone of voice after endless phone calls that have been recorded and monitored. And if you get an email from me, I didn't physically write that. My mouth did, but I didn't physically write it.
You're just
And
resourceful.
It's got me to I've solved a problem. The way I run workshops, I use post-it notes. I use alternatives to deliveries that allow me to not have to write anything on a whiteboard. But as a result, it means my workshop's different because I'm not commandeering the room.
Yeah.
I'm facilitating the best outcome possible for everyone at it.
Yeah.
I'm not using the same tools as everybody else.
Yeah.
Writers, all these people in their stroke, in their element of genius, when you bring your genius to the table and you ignore the rest and stop trying to be something you're not,
Oh, yeah.
that's when you enter the room and people are like, well, I can't live without that now.
Yeah. So well said.
I can't live without it.
So well said. And there's so many people that I wish could hear that. I wish I could pick up the phone and tell so many people that myself.
And I think, but it's so difficult because it means you have to lean into the thing that you're not good at.
Yeah. Or you think that you're not good at. Yeah.
And I think whenever somebody really acknowledges what is different about them, the thing that got bullied at school, even it can be any part of who you are that was pointed out as a negative thing when you were younger will be what makes you different when you're older.
So real, man.
You know, like so that real. The big nose that you had in school is part of why someone might remember you in the meeting.
Yeah.
It's the guy with the big nose.
Yeah. He's
Own
a killer.
That shit.
Yeah.
Just anything that was remembered in a negative light when you were younger becomes what people know about you when you're older.
Yeah.
And your job is to like wrap yourself around that.
Yeah.
I do this all the time now. The one thing that I've noticed about LA, and I'm fascinated by it, is how easy it is for me to leverage life with my accent.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
It's a different accent.
Oh, yeah.
Back home in Australia, no one gives a shit.
Yeah.
But here, it's like this superpower.
100%.
You know, this thing opens doors. It
yeah.
helps me when I'm talking to bouncers at clubs.
Yeah.
It helps me everywhere.
Yeah.
They're like, oh,
absolutely.
That's because it's different.
Yeah.
It's not what everyone hears all the time.
Guy
like if someone's trying to sweet talk a bouncer, good luck doing that as a normal American.
Yeah.
Like it's harder for you than it is for me.
Yeah.
And you just got to be okay with that.
Yeah. You just got to accept it.
You got to accept it and just don't worry about using what you've been gifted.
Yeah. No, I mean, wholeheartedly, I couldn't agree more. First and foremost, I appreciate the praise. That's high praise coming from you because you're someone that I greatly...
The praise came at the very beginning of that rant, so I actually forgot I did it.
Yeah, but I greatly appreciate you because you're someone that I heavily admire and deeply admire, so that means a lot. But to touch on what you were saying about a superpower, with an artist that we both were involved with, right, we recognize their prowess of them having a very unique vocal ability, right? And how would you convey the fact that what we know to be true, as one of the biggest artists in the world, you could make the argument that they are probably the biggest artists in the world, attempted to recreate their demos, right? And wasn't able to do it. That, if you observe it as a superpower and say, look, I've made something compelling enough that literally one of the top 3 biggest artists on the planet attempted to recreate it and couldn't do it. And I'm going to own this shit and I'm going to go stand on stage and I'm going to sing it for the world. Where would you be? You understand?
100%. And I think it comes down to
instead of viewing it as the detriment of I'm afraid to step on that stage because I'm afraid of not being accepted. I'm afraid of not being successful.
It comes down to like my dad's always had this thing of burn the boats.
Mm-hmm.
When you decide to push your boat offshore, you're not going back.
Mm-hmm.
And
wow,
I think sometimes, as to use that as an example, if you know that the music that you write is only valuable because of the voice that's delivering it, you don't write music for anyone else.
Yeah, you
burn the boats.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you burn the boats and you go, I ain't writing shit for no one.
Yeah,
no one touches my work.
Yeah.
It's only valuable because it's coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
So, and the way I treat it, because at the end of the day, as a label owner, as someone who works on the business side of music, I want someone that no one can copy.
Yeah.
So if no one can copy you, just be you, do more of you, give yourself the best chance possible to win. Get on stage, do everything to make you the biggest.
Yeah, man.
And burn the boats.
Love yourself, man.
Just burn, because like it happens with businesses that like I'm very sheepish on entering starting businesses. I used to just start everything and deal with the consequences later. And I had like 15 different things at any given time. And now I work in some cases harder than most people work on their business, on the business that doesn't even get started. Because I like to know that if I push this boat offshore, I'm burning everything. It ain't coming back. It's either going to go to the moon or we drown.
Yeah.
And it's the only way it's the only way I know to operate now, because otherwise you end up starting everything. You end up giving yourself options and ways out and like burn. burn the boats. And I think
Epic.
if you understand clearly what you are and what you're not,
Yeah.
run and
Yeah.
just don't look back.
No, man, that's perfectly stated.
You
That's
know?
perfectly stated. And I think that's a great place to leave off on is understanding the summary of self and what your strengths and weaknesses are. And I think that's a perfect analogy to state to artists. Like if they can understand that philosophy, like of self-empowerment and doubling down on the unique trait that you possess, it's a superpower. It's ultimately a superpower.
And it happens in every portion of life. If you are gifted with the ability to not make the marks to go to university, that's a forced burning of the boat.
Yeah, I didn't go to college.
Neither did I.
No.
And I couldn't have gone to college if I
Me
wanted
neither.
to.
No, I couldn't sit
So
still.
as a result, like, burn the boat.
Yeah, I did 2
You know?
weeks. I did 2 weeks of the first semester. And like, I don't even think I was full attendance for those 2 weeks, but I was sitting in the class one day and I just recognized it just wasn't for me. That wasn't the manner in which I was going to learn. And I had such bigger aspirations that didn't run concurrent to what the university was going to give me, because there's plenty of great things that come from that, whether it's networking or people who want to pursue a certain aspect or field of work that they need the intangibles and they need a degree to make it happen.
Yeah.
Salute to them.
Yeah.
I was not one of those people.
100%. And I think the last thing on my end, I think everyone comes from different backgrounds. Everyone comes with different opportunity levels. For anyone to make anything happen, everyone has to do the same amount of work.
Yeah.
You only look at it from your lens.
Yeah.
If you're someone that's had to come up in a broken home, no cash, sleeping homeless, that's been your journey to get to where you got to successfully. But somebody who's had opportunity gifted to them has had to work differently to you.
Yeah.
They've had to remove opportunities. They've had to take things out of their life to make something happen.
Yeah.
Both are work.
Yeah.
They're just different types of
Yeah,
work.
rich
and
dad,
you
poor
can
dad.
never understand the effort that comes in on either side.
Yeah.
And all you can do is understand the scenario you have right now.
Yeah.
And one thing, last thing, I'm so bullish on this right now, is the word no.
Yeah. Oh, you've empowered me with that.
I am so obsessed with it
Yeah.
at the moment, because every single time I say it, it reinforces my yes.
Yeah.
It makes it that much stronger. And what I say yes to gets deeper and deeper and deeper and harder and harder to get out of, because I've gone deeper and deeper into it.
Yeah.
And I just am obsessed with it. And that's my
No,
last thing in
no
my
is a
head.
superpower, and you and a few of my other mentors have pounded that into my head.
a full sentence.
You always want to be a people pleaser, you know.
100%.
But yes, no is most definitely and most certainly a full sentence. It's a
done.
superpower. It's an absolute
It's the
superpower.
hardest sentence to say, but it's
Yeah.
probably the shortest.
Yeah, it's our innate feature to want to, to help and extend
100%.
as much as possible, but it doesn't work that way,
100%. But I just want to wrap this episode off by thanking my incredible, amazing co-host.
You got me. I appreciate you, man. It's such a joy to have you in the flesh,
100%.
And I'm excited to roll these out, having you back on it, actually being face to face, not having to look at you through a digital sphere, which is nice, And it's been a pleasure, man. It's so good to have you back here. I'm excited to kick off the second season of what we're doing here
100%.
now, reinvigorating ourselves, refocusing, doing what we're doing, and I'm really looking forward to it, man.
Looking forward to having Danny on again soon. running it up
Yes,
as a
that's going to be awesome.
collective.
I'm looking forward to having your wife on soon, which is going to be
Yep.
awesome, and just a series of episodes, which then will scale into some awesome guests. So it's amazing, man.
I love it.
I
Let's run
appreciate you.
Cool.
Cheers.
It's weird. The first time I've ever do a fist bump at a podcast.